All right, it is 1:30 and it's time to start the caught in or preventing caught in and struck by incidents webinar. My name is Cole Craven. I'm the safety director at TPM. And as with any of my webinars or presentations, if you'd like a copy of this or you'd like a version of this for you to use, this one's really is kind of built like that for you to take and use for your employees. But we'll get into things, but probably best to start with the controls. So up to your upper right hand screen, you've got a little orange button with an arrow on it. It's called your grab tab, and that opens and closes your menu. You can mute or unmute yourself. Right now I've got nobody muted because we're getting pretty good, no feedback, so I should hopefully be able to hear you if you have a question. The webcam, it's just off. There's a hand raise button, but the best way to communicate is with the chat screen. And so in that chat screen, you can type a message and you can send it to me, you can send it to the whole audience, you can send it to another attendee. But I would like to point out and thank the SHIP grant in Washington for helping put this together. They have funded the research into a number of incidents, and it's definitely something that we have a hazard of or a risk of in our industries. Regardless of what industry we're in, if you have heavy equipment, you have forklifts, you have rolling stock, this is a big concern. And so we're just going to cover, kind of the main topics so we understand maybe where we have hazards, and then, how to prevent those, some different ideas on that. And really there's more on the struck by, there's different type of hazards that a lot of us don't think of, because it's not just falling objects or flying ones, but it's also swinging or slipping things. But the biggest one for all of us is very likely going to be the struck by objects on ground level. That's where we've got most of our hazard. So the struck by definition, this is straight out of the Washington L&I codes, and even in the code itself, this is a struck by hazards are frequently related to improper material and equipment handling or poor housekeeping. I would absolutely 100% agree with that. I find one of the big issues, or maybe one of the biggest issues, is we let the machines and the pedestrians all occupy the same space. And for me, the most effective way of preventing those incidents is by keeping the machines and the humans away from each other. Because your pedestrians are going to likely be the most dangerous thing that our equipment operators come in contact with. So they originate from many, many sources. The most common that I see in all of our industries is getting hit by forklifts or the log loaders, or even in the last couple of months, we've had 2 fatalities where people have been hit by trucks. They've been in the same area as trucks pulling on or leaving the property, and people have been hit. You get it from falling or flying equipment, and by flying it doesn't need to be just the equipment itself. It could be the debris that equipment generates. So sparks or embers or particles of wood. So it could be what is being ejected by that piece of equipment. I do see a lot of materials that we stack up to put in racking, that the racking fails, or we just have bad boxes or pallets in the stack, and eventually that pallet fails, and it's fallen and hit people. And then an odd one that we've been seeing more and more of are ladders that have just been kind of leaned against a wall, and they'll slip and hit somebody in the head or hit them in the shoulder. We just had one break somebody's shoulder and their collarbone. So there's a lot of different things that could get you, but really it does come down to a certain extent to the housekeeping. We left things in areas where it's just a bad place to leave them. I see a lot of in my warehouses where we've hit beams or sprinkler pipes. We love to hit sprinkler pipes with the forklift, and they're almost impossible to see. Missing machine guards. Yeah, I see a lot of missing machine guards. And that's not just to protect you from the stuff flying out of that tool. It's also supposed to protect you from reaching into that saw or that planer. There are some times when we do unusual work for us. You know, if we're doing shipping and transport stuff, for us to do some groundskeeping or do tree trimming or pruning would be a dangerous thing for us, even though we may not think of it as being too dangerous, where it's unusual from our daily routine. Once we get into those, you know, it's the dangers of unusual tasks, the dangers of doing something that's out of our norm. And then a lot of times it's the materials that we are lifting and the equipment we're using to lift it. So, and we all know the workers die every year from these. Last year we had 583 people die from struck by accidents. This is not taking any vehicle accidents into the equation at all. These are almost exclusively are pedestrians getting hit by equipment or getting hit by cargo or freight. And I hear a lot, well, it's, you know, probably mostly in construction. You know, they're getting hit by, it's not. Of those 583, only 119 of them were in construction. This is general industry where this is a bigger issue. And they're, now that they've reclassified these and they're digging a little bit deeper, they're finding out that 10% of all occupational deaths are from struck by. And so it's definitely worth something to think about how you're doing it. And I'll, at the end here, I'll talk about some of the things I've seen that have been exceedingly effective, like really, really effective. So the big broad definition of this is they exist anytime a worker could be hit or struck by an object. Could be something as anecdotal as a hammer falling out. It could be something that we've got up on a crane or a hoist that slips out. It could be something up on a walkway that one of our employees accidentally knocks over the edge and hits them. So it's a lot of different things, and it could be a piece of equipment flat out running them over. So where I've seen in our industries, where I've seen this is when we have a catwalk or a mezzanine, or we're doing construction and we still have employees working underneath that elevated work. I've seen it a lot where we're moving equipment overhead and we're moving it directly over employees that are doing their work. We've really got to, if we've got a suspended load, I don't care if it's a forklift, on a hoist, on a crane, you gotta keep your folks out from underneath it. If you've got to have a tagline, then you hook up a tagline and they're standing well out from underneath that thing. And that's one I do see quite a bit of, that we get accustomed to that stuff moving over us, or we'll lift up a pallet over somebody working on the ground. We're really risking permanently damaging or killing somebody. And then there's also a lot of material storage where we will stack up 4 stacks of pallets, and that bottom pallet is just completely trashed. And I'll see stacks fall over that way, or racking that's so damaged that somebody sneezes on it and it finally just can't hold anymore. Because if we've got racking anywhere, it's getting hit by forklifts. In some way, shape, or form, if we got racking, we probably come in contact with our forklifts. So the one that's kind of a sleeper, or I don't know if it's a sleeper, it's one we don't think of too much, because I see more people grinding stuff right into their own face, their own body. But the tools we're working with themselves can create flying objects, or the materials that we're working on create those flying objects. And some, yeah, it's a nail gun. We can understand the nail coming out of that. But sanding or grinding or cutting, that's all generating flying debris. And so, you know, how you protect yourself from that, well, you keep the guards on, but you've got to wear the appropriate PPE. But the pressurized air lines, that pressurized air above 30 PSI, it can drive oil and other things into your skin. And if it gets into your bloodstream, it can kill you. An air bubble in your bloodstream could kill you. And so if we're using compressed air, I do see a lot of folks being real cavalier about that. I cringe every time I see somebody using an airline to blow themselves off, because it doesn't take much pressure to get that under your skin and into your bloodstream. Now this one's a bit more extreme. It's not one we all are dealing with, but it's one I've seen recently. When we're doing construction, we have no problem craning or hoisting either building materials or pipes or giant I-beams over people. And this is a 2-part thing. We can't let anybody work underneath that stuff. And two, we've also got to make sure that the equipment we're lifting with, and not just the crane, but the chains and the lines and everything, that stuff's been inspected and is in good shape. Are those safety latches, those keepers in place and actually functioning? Are the lanyards and the lines of the lifting straps we're using, are those frayed or damaged? We've been using them for 15 years, because there is a lot of that where we're using equipment that its best days are long past it. So for us, for all of us, I think this is their biggest one, and is that we could be struck by moving materials, whether it's a forklift or a pallet jack or a piece of heavy equipment that either we brought in, or if it's a log lift, something we see every day, and we get accustomed to those things. And the reality is on any of this equipment, they can't see us very well, and they're very likely focused on the work in front of them. But the other one that we don't think of is that traffic in and of itself creates its own huge struck by hazard. And it's not just traffic of our employees coming on and off the lot, it's also customers coming on and off, or it's people turning around in our lot. They are very likely not thinking one bit about who you've got on the ground there and who's working. They're thinking about getting their task done, pulling in to pick up materials they need, pulling in to pay a bill, turning around because they went the wrong way down the street. And so I'm kind of letting some of the good ideas out early, but one of the best, most effective things I've seen is to really limit where our foot traffic can be. I've got a few places, one of my mills, they don't let anybody on foot on the mill property unless you're in a building. You get in, you drive in a vehicle all the way to basically unloading zones to go into a building. They don't want anybody on foot out around all that equipment, and I love it. We let the equipment have most of the space to get the work done, but it also really eliminates people coming on the property, either in their car or on foot, and not understanding what we do and how we do it. That customer walking around your property looking for somebody or just checking out what we do is incredibly dangerous, because they don't know our equipment, they don't know our people, and we don't expect them to be there. And if you have to do something where you're working near vehicle traffic, you don't have to be the city to go put up barricades. If we're going to be working on something, and I know you won't be patching, you might be patching your own potholes if you're in Spokane, but I know you're likely not going to be patching your own potholes. But what I have seen already this time of year is we're doing landscaping work, and we're literally a foot away from the highway. If we're going to be doing work like that, we need to put up some sort of warning or barricade to not just warn the cars coming down the street, but to warn our people where the danger zone really starts. So if you can, plan all your work. Look for those potential hazards. That doesn't mean you're going to be looking at blueprints, but you can look at, okay, here's what we're doing. And this becomes really, really important when we're doing that non-routine task, that weird, unusual thing that we don't do very often, only once or twice a year. We need to stop and think about that a little bit, because each one of these tasks is going to have different hazards, very unique hazards. The hard hats, as a career safety geek, I run into a lot of folks, and they just put hard hats on everybody. They say it's a safer way. And I understand the mindset, but really, if there's no overhead hazard that exists of something falling on you or you bumping your head on something, then I'm not generally going to recommend that you wear one. I see a lot of places where you got everybody in hard hats and there's literally no overhead hazard. There's a lot of reasons for that, but I don't like over prescribing PPE when it's not needed. With the grinding and the sanding and stuff, this is one where I can't seem to get people to wear face shields all the time. And, I may be a bit of a wimp, but I don't like getting hit in the face with sparks and slag and big chunks of wood and metal. And it's not just getting hit in the cheek. I'm mostly worried about your eyes. Eyes, when they get hurt, they don't like to heal. So if with the work you're doing or the tool you're using creates flying objects, or the material you're working on, you need to wear that face shield. We're not just protecting our eyes. I have seen somebody get teeth knocked out from a big chunk of wood that came kicking back out. So you've got to protect your entire face. So the face shield is your absolute best friend. I would hang them on every drill press, bench grinder, in the area where we're using hand grinders, just so there's no excuse to not be using it. Now, those of you who have a DOT exposure, you've already been, well inundated with the high visibility vest and clothing thing. So, and it's a good thing. We want to make sure our workers that are working in proximity to motor vehicles, rolling stock, heavy equipment, that they are visible, and they are a good thing, because it is going to draw it's going to draw attention to them. So when we see them moving around, it just makes it that much easier to see them. If I could change anything overnight, I might go look at everybody's material storage and change that. This is a good example. This is good. I should have put in, I've got 50, 60 pictures of bad with damaged racking, or pallets that are leaning, or we're stacking pallets too high, or we have a whole pile of logs that is just really too high and there's too many of them, and you get almost an avalanche effect with this stuff. And that the hazard isn't just right next to this poorly stacked materials or this poorly stored materials. That hazard zone may be 40 feet out or more from that. If you were to lose your racking in your warehouse, you could take your whole building down. So how we store those materials, it's not just if you're storing metal studs, well, it's pretty easy to have those be nice and neat. If you've got pallets of dog food, that's much harder. And so putting in some sort of controls as to we only stack 3 pallets high or 4 pallets high, or we only put damaged product, the damaged product, never gets stacked, or the top spot in the racking is only, lightweight product. Having some controls there, because I see a lot of really scary material storage at almost all my accounts. I love this setup. This is inside the white lines there. That's where the humans work. Outside of those pathways, that is where the equipment gets to be. And this is an extreme example, and I also love it because it's super clean. But it's that pedestrian pathway and the equipment pathways, I'm a huge believer in. And if we can protect or barricade, even if it's just a visual barricade, the spots where our folks are working, that's a good thing. A lot of the lifting and rigging equipment I see is pretty rough. You have to inspect it all before you're using it. Do not allow people and train them to not work under a suspended load, because they've got to stay well clear of it. And like I said before, if you've got to have a tagline, fine. You get that tagline long enough that you're well out of the way if that stuff falls and breaks apart. So the walking under or us being comfortable lifting loads over people's got to stop. It just takes one failure and we've got a new fatality story. And it could be something as small as just 20, 30 boards that could kill somebody. So and there's a lot of that going on. We get so accustomed to the routine and the equipment and the work we're doing that we'll walk under somebody carrying double pallets of of shingles or of salt, of ice melt. I saw a lot of that this winter. So also the other one is don't try to lift anything that's beyond your equipment's capacity, whether it's a forklift, which I see the most of. That we got a forklift that'll lift, say, 8,000 pounds, and we've got to move a 10,000 pound thing. We'll have people stand on the back as human counterweights, or we know we can't lift it all the ground, so we'll lift it up. The steering wheel, the turning wheels are in the air, and we'll back it out. If you've got something that heavy, either break it down or get the equipment that can handle it. And there's a fair amount of that where we've got things well past the capacity of what they can handle. So not applicable to all of us, but there is, to a certain extent, there is parts of this that really we all have exposure to. To me, comparatively to our people on the ground, forklifts to me, I think, are heavy equipment. A small forklift weighs almost 15,000 pounds. So you've got 7.5 tons of metal and engine and rubber and everything, and you got a person that maybe weighs 200. So to me, that is heavy equipment. But also, we've got folks that have got snow plows, and we got folks that have got bulldozers and graders and backhoes and all that stuff. We've got to, one, if we can put that in a zone and have it work inside of its zone, that's great. But you also have to train your pedestrians. I'm not talking just your people that work out in the, in the warehouse floor or on the mill. You've got to train your pedestrians. So your salesmen, your visitors, your contractors, your office folks, your HR person, of how to work around this heavy equipment. They can't approach it. Teach them to never approach it from behind. You got to approach from a place where the operator can see you. And this is also a great area that some of us are not doing this, but the high visibility equipment, the clothing, if we're making people suit up in that, it's going to make that much more likely they'll be seen by our equipment operator, who is not likely looking all around in 360 degrees looking for strange pedestrians. They're focused on their work. So we do need to teach our folks, our pedestrians, not just the people that work out by the equipment. We need to teach everybody who's on the property how to behave around, our heavy equipment. And like I said, I consider forklifts to be heavy equipment. And if it's a sign, or it's directions to tell them to stay in the walkway, or it's something telling them, hey, you stay the heck out of here, that's all part of that training. And then just once again, going back to we're doing landscaping work or we're doing maintenance work and we're right next to the highway, we've got to make sure our folks have got the space, whether it's barricades or coning something off or putting those things up, to make people aware that we've got something going on up there. Even the people cleaning up trash on the side of the highway, you see signs well before you see them that they're coming up. And if you're going to be working next to the highway, you need to be doing the same thing. So if it's not a highway, it's a little county road, same deal. We need to warn people what's coming up ahead. And if you can, put up those physical barriers to protect your workers. And it doesn't have to be a physical barrier. It doesn't have to be a Jersey wall that's going to stop the car. It could be some cones or barricades, or I don't even care if it's caution tape. That barrier doesn't necessarily need to hold things in or out, but it needs to let people know where they shouldn't go. So, the easy answer to give on this, if you want to reduce those struck by hazards, then come up with standard operating procedures for all the jobs. And you'll see the safe way, and it'll be instructions on how to do it every time the right way. So writing standard operating procedures or SOPs for all your jobs, that's a great way. But we've got to make sure and we're requiring people to follow the safety instructions. The training on personnel that use equipment tends to be pretty good. It's the rest of the people that may only go out into the yard or into the warehouse once or twice a year. They need to be trained as well too, how to treat that equipment, how to communicate with them, what they need to wear, what they need to do, where they need to walk. Supervisors, if you're out there, managers, if you're out there, you've got to hold people accountable. I'm not saying get in people's face and yell and scream at them. I'm just saying we can't let people go by and they're not wearing the gear they're wearing. If you walk by somebody grinding and they're blowing sparks right in their face, don't walk by. You don't have to write them up, but go up and talk to them and remind them of how we do things. Going out and doing safety inspections yourself or having folks like me come in is great. You get especially if you get a fresh set of eyes in there, they're going to see issues that we've become kind of blind to. And then if you've got hazards, and we all do, use the right PPE. And it may just be high visibility clothing. It may be a face shield. It may be maybe a respirator or a dust mask. It could be lots of things, but we've got to make sure people are using it, because we are trying to protect them from permanently injuring or even getting killed. So, and I know this is not something we can all do, but if you could mark off and have your hazardous areas away from or contained where the machinery works here, the people work here, and put up signs and have, controls there so visitors and salesmen and the UPS guy knows they can't go in there, and let them know there's equipment moving around, whether it's a forklift or a front end loader. Good housekeeping to me is kind of the root of all of our issues. I can tell how well a business is doing by how clean they are pretty quickly. Because you're not going to have just a housekeeping issue. You got multiple issues. That's just a symptom. I have seen people have been putting up nets on the edges of mezzanines and of elevated platforms to, one, serve as fall protection to catch people, but they're also incredibly effective at catching falling objects or things we knock off. Your lifting tools and equipment, it's got to be secure. It's got to be in good shape. Don't go beyond its capacity. Most of your all of your hoisting and craning equipment, just like our forklifts, have to be inspected regularly before every use, but they also have to be annually inspected to make sure they're still worthy of being used. And I know I've said this 20 times already, or pretty close. Man, the designated pedestrian walkways versus a designated machine area or driveway, I guess we'll say, are huge. They've been massively effective. They've seen such great decreases in injuries and near misses and equipment damage, the whole deal. So, take a look at that. If you've got a regular foot traffic presence, go walk it and see. Hey, there's an area where I can paint yellow and tell people they can only walk on the, the yellow pathway. Or can I put up, I have seen in a couple of my fruit warehouses, they put up railings. You're like like you can't get out of the railings. You're walking in the railings until you get to the next set of offices or you get to the work area. So they've actually put up barriers to keep the equipment from being able to hurt people or to keep the people from getting out from the walkway. And that's fantastic. I know my people there are going to be, very safe. No one's completely safe, but they're going to be quite a bit safer. But it's kind of in a nutshell covering that. I did put this together with the for folks to use it, the PowerPoint, and do the presentation themselves. If you want it, let me know. That's my cell and that's my email. I can get that to you, and I'll make it so you can edit it and change pictures and do whatever you want to with it. But it was kind of scripted at a frontline employee level, / supervisor level, that if we want to use a copy of this, go for it. But that is it. I appreciate everybody attending the webinar. If you have any questions or comments or concerns, feel free to get a hold of me. And if you want a copy of this, I'm happy to provide it. All right, I'll leave this information up for just a little bit, but that is it. Thank you for attending it, guys.